It's the end. Or is it?
Hey y'all, today I'd like to review the fourth film in the Friday the 13th franchise, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter.
Let's get to the basics. It's a 1984 film of about 91 minutes in length, and it's directed by Joseph Zito. Now, if you've been watching all my Friday the 13th reviews thus far, yep, you know it, spoiler alert, as there's going to be with all of my Friday the 13th reviews. Sorry, it's just as if I feel I can't really talk in depth on the film if I gotta worry about spoiling something. But you guys probably already know all about this in my Friday the 13th reviews, the avid viewer that you are. Now for the plot. Simply put, the events in this film take place almost directly after the events of Friday the 13th Part 3. Police are examining Higgins Haven, the area where Jason went on his most recent murderous rampage. And Jason, who you presume is dead after being hit in front of the mask with a machete, he's taken to the morgue. But then amazingly, yet still fully expected, Jason somehow lives. Then the movie starts to follow a group of your familiarly cliche group of teenagers. The group of careless teenagers you've come to expect from the Friday the 13th franchise. Yeah, in this film, the main characters, the teenagers, they seem kind of alike. By the time you get to this film, the fourth film in the franchise, the personalities, all the main characters before, they start to blend and blur together. They all seem the same. But as I stated in one of my earlier reviews, that's probably the director's intention when directing a slasher film. They try to make the viewer feel strangely disconnected from the main character, so when the main character is, say, brutally murdered later on in the film, you don't really feel any twinge of remorse. You feel like the killer itself, non-caring, and above all, entertained when you see a character get killed. I mean, after all, that's what you're looking for in a slasher film. That is where the entertainment value is, and what entertainment that is. So yeah, this group of teenagers, they're staying in a house on Crystal Lake, partying and whatnot, and across the street from this house where these teenagers are staying lives perhaps the most interesting character in the whole film, Tommy. He's a pretty strange, likable kid who makes his own masks, of aliens and such. At one point in the film, Tommy and Trish, who I assume is his mom, their car breaks down, they can't get it started, and this one hitchhiker by the name of Rob, he stumbles upon them, actually is invited back to the house with them, and once in the house, he does witness some of Tommy's masks, and he's amazed. So as the film goes on, these group of teenagers, Tommy, Trish, his mom, and the hitchhiker Rob, they all sort of meet together to try to survive against Jason, who just so happens to leave the morgue after killing two doctors who were stationed there and stumbles upon all of these people living on Crystal Lake. And so basically the rest of this film follows the same pattern all the other Friday the 13th movies follow. Jason goes around killing people one by one until one or more people survive, somehow. Now, what I really liked was the fact that this film starts off with a recap, showing some scenes and kills from the first three films. So why even see the first three films then, right? Nah, I still suggest you see the first three films. And then the title sequence is awesome, with this hockey mask coming towards you on the screen, then explodes in this fiery explosion. This is Friday the 13th. Okay, I love it. Now, a word about the murders. You may recall in my review of Friday the 13th Part 3, I did mention that the murders were more bloody and graphic. Same story with this film, though if anything I'd have to say that the kills are even more bloody and more graphic. Okay, I don't know if it's just the fact that this is supposedly the final film of the franchise or if it's the pinnacle of the franchise, but the director definitely made a point in making the murders more brutal. He made Jason a more brutal killer. I mean, in previous installments, you'd see Jason kill somebody, and as morbid as this sounds, it'd be somewhat humorous. A good example of this would be in Part 3 when Jason grabs the one guy's head and squeezes it, and his one eyeball pops out. Just some of those weird, wacky moments that seem straight out of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead films. Yet, this time around, that humor is lost. Now the kills are just rough, heartless, and savage. Some of my favorite kills would have to be at the beginning of this film in the morgue, when Jason arises and he kills one of the doctors. He grabs his hair, takes this bone saw or something, cuts the front of his neck, and then just twists his head. And then my second favorite kill in the film, even though it doesn't really have any blood present in it, is when Jason grabs one of the female main characters, throws her off the balcony, and the camera captures her in slow motion as she falls and plummets and lands directly on the car below. I don't know, I just think slow-mo was a nice touch in capturing that scene. And those are my two favorite kills. I do remember others, but those are the only two that really just stick in my mind and leave an impact. The rest are just your everyday bloody kills. Oh yeah, and there is one kill in this film that will be seen as extremely painful to the male audience who's viewing this film. Don't want to spoil what that is, you'll know what it is. In the end, only Trish and Tommy are left standing to face Jason. And when it seems certain that Trish is going to be murdered by Jason, Tommy distracts him. Tommy does this weird thing where he shaves his head in order to look like Jason did when he was a little kid. It somehow distracts Jason long enough so Trish can attack him with the machete, and then later on Tommy grabs the machete and finishes Jason off. Again, this part still somewhat confuses me, and my question is, how did Tommy ever think that his idea would be successful? Seems like a shot-in-the-dark idea, but hey, then again it worked, who am I to complain? Yeah, that moment when Jason gets hit in the head by Tommy with the machete and he falls down, landing on the machete handle and drives the machete deeper into his head, that made me cringe. Tommy and Trish embrace, but then Tommy notices one of Jason's hands are moving. Seeing Jason is in fact still not dead, Tommy grabs the machete again and brutally hacks Jason, somewhat echoing Jason's brutal actions previously throughout the film. And at the end of the film, you get a nice little still shot close-up of Tommy staring kind of psychotically at the camera. So that's all I can really say about this film. A pretty interesting installment into the Friday the 13th franchise. A worthy installment by all means. It is not my favorite film in the franchise. That would have to be part 2, but it's still very entertaining. Jason reprises his role terrifically in this installment. I was not criticizing the actor when I said his murders were brutal. And I was by no means putting the character of Jason down. I'm just saying, after seeing the first 3 films, you definitely see a different side of Jason in this film. A part you're not really accustomed to going in. But then again, I guess the brutality does make the murder seem somewhat more realistic. Maybe. So I do think Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is slightly better than part 3, though it's not quite as good as part 1, the first film. I did rate the first film, Friday the 13th, a 5 out of 5, and I did rate Friday the 13th part 3 a 4.5 out of 5. With that being said, as odd as this sounds, I would have to rate Friday the 13th, the final chapter, a 4.8 out of 5. So if you haven't seen it, as always, heartily recommend it. And so, therefore, I've also watched and reviewed all 4 films on my Friday the 13th 4-movie collection. So that means I don't yet own the 5th film in the Friday the 13th franchise, which means I'm going to be taking a little break from Friday the 13th. So my next movie review will be of Nightmare on Elm Street, the first film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
So rest assured, I will eventually review the rest of the Friday the 13th films, just whenever I acquire the rest of them.
So remember, mark it down, Nightmare on Elm Street will be my next movie review.
As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy what you're seeing.
See ya.